Hey everybody, welcome to the press. Welcome to the start of a new week. We've got a two-tournament PGA Tour week. We've got a major on the LPGA. We've got the Korn Ferry Tour to think about. We've got the Champions Tour to think about. We've got so much going on this week. It's really, really exciting to kind of use this as a jumping off point from the Masters. I hope you enjoyed last week. To those of you that tuned in, we had obviously, you get a bigger audience for the week of the Masters, because that's just the reality of it. By the way, I'm Ryan Balaji. If you haven't listened to the show before, thanks for listening. And, you know, it's not going to carry over week after week, right? I mean, we have our big tournaments in golf, right? You've got the 4 major championships on the men's side. Maybe you get the Players, maybe, the President's Cup or Ryder Cup, depending on the year, maybe some other events. But for the most part, that's kind of, last week was our Super Bowl, and we nailed it, which was awesome. Scottie Scheffler won the Masters for the second time in 3 years, and our theory of the case was absolutely right. It was either Scottie Scheffler wins in a runaway, or something kind of weird happens. Well, something kind of weird almost did happen. Ludwig Åberg almost won the Masters in his first appearance, which would have made him the 4th guy ever to have done it, and the first guy to have done it since Fuzzy Zoeller in 1979. The other 2 people that did it were in the first 2 Masters in 1934 and 1935. Gene Sarazen did not play in the first Masters. So as the second Masters champion, he also won in his first appearance. He would have become the 3rd player in the modern era to have won a major in his first appearance, period, going after Ben Curtis, and then at the 03 Open at Royal St. George's, and then Keegan Bradley winning the 2011 PGA and Atlanta Athletic Club, which I was there for that one. And that would have been crazy. So, I mean, yes, the number 9 player in the world winning the Masters wouldn't have been that crazy, but given the history working against him, it certainly would have been. Then Collin Morikawa kind of came out of nowhere because he had just, for the first time in his career, lost strokes on the approach in 3 consecutive tournaments. Well, it comes back, has a great week. Tommy Fleetwood would have been weird. He's never won in America. That would have been pretty strange. Max Homa's never won a major. He just had his first top 10 last summer, and obviously he's getting better in the majors. So the theory of the case was right. It was pretty much right there for the taking. Now, that all said, I did hit Scheffler. I bet him at the halfway point of the tournament. I believe he was minus 110 at that point. I had a boost, odds boost from DraftKings to make it plus 125, albeit on a limited bet, a $25 bet. So I did pick up him. I had all 4 guys who were in contention on Sunday at some point. I had Ludwig, I had Collin Morikawa, I had Max, had them at decent prices. I didn't have them at pre-tournament prices, but I had them at decent prices. I knew I was going to win regardless. It was just how much. And unfortunately with Scheffler, that was the smallest position I had, because I didn't want to bet him really a ton at minus 110 or minus 120. And then obviously, once you got past everybody hitting into the water on 11 and Max on 12, and that was it. The price became like minus 10 million, and you couldn't bet it. That all said, that worked out pretty good. So, now we move on. We've got 2 tournaments this week, as I mentioned. We've got the RBC Heritage, which is the signature event at Hilton Head Island on Harbour Town Golf Links. We're going to talk about that mostly today. And then there's an opposite field event this week, the Corrales Puntacana Championship in the Dominican Republic. We'll touch on that just briefly here today because there are lines that are out for it. And then tomorrow, as we typically do, we'll talk about the model for the week. I'm not inclined to do a model for the Punta Cana Championship, but I'm going to anyway, because there's enough of a field there that I think it might be worth it. I don't think it's particularly indicative because of a lot of the players competing and don't get a lot of PGA Tour starts, but we'll run through that anyway. And then on Wednesday, we're going to spend the bulk of the time talking about everything else. We'll talk about some matchups. We'll talk about some props for the PGA Tour this week. We are going to talk about the Chevron Championship on the LPGA. It's their first major of the year. Nelly Court is going for a 5th win in a row, which would be a tie of the LPGA record for consecutive wins with Nancy Lopez and Annika Sorenstam. Kind of feels a lot like this past week was, where it's either going to be Nelly or something weird, but we'll talk about that on Wednesday. Hopefully you enjoyed the kind of live betting show we did on Saturday. It turned out to be pretty good. It didn't feel the need to do anything additional on Sunday because I was happy with my positions, and hopefully you were too. Hopefully you came out ahead over the course of the week and everything that you bet on. While Scheffler didn't make me a ton of dollars now. He did make me a ton of dollars in my one and done league. I used him for the Masters, won the $3.6 million that came along with it. That's the good news. The bad news is in the league that I'm in, which is highly competitive, there are a lot of good one and done players in that league. Many of them, not all of them, but I would say 25%, 20 to 25% of them use Scheffler at the Players. So they got him for $4.5 million. I got him for $3.6 million, which means I'm only down to them $900,000 on the use of Scotty Scheffler alone. It's kind of wild, huh? All right. Well, so we got the Heritage this week. Hilton Head Golf, Harbour Town Golf Links. This is Jack Nicklaus's first design. He did this in conjunction with Pete Dye in the late 1960s, about 1970. I think it came out 69 or 70. And this is the tightest golf course on the PGA Tour. It just is. It's a statistical outlier compared to every other course on the PGA Tour. And if you've seen Hilton Head before, or Harbour Town before, you understand why. It's a tight golf course. There are a lot of overhanging trees. The effective playing areas, even though the fairway may look decently wide on some shots, is much smaller because you'll be blocked out if you hit to the wrong sides of the fairway or under trees or what have you. You're going to have to play a lot of creative shots. Straight golf is good golf on this golf course. So it tends to favor players who can just hit the ball straight. You don't need a big curve on it. You just need to hit it straight. And that kind of takes out, in my opinion, guys like Max Homa and Collin Morikawa, who are great last week, because they're comfortable hitting a cut. And in Collin Morikawa's case, kind of big cut. Well, that doesn't work so hot here. So you got to think about players who can just kind of mash it straight. And Scotty Scheffler obviously falls into that category. I don't know if he's going to wind up playing this week. He's in the field today. He's listed plus 400 to win. And I get that he wants to commit to this tournament because he's committed to the PGA Tour. But he's going to be at home for the next couple of days. And there's always a decent chance with his wife that's 9 months pregnant, almost 10 months pregnant, that the baby could come any day and he just winds up not playing. So what I would tell you is if you want to bet this tournament and you have some conviction after either hearing what I've said or doing other research or whatever, do it as soon as you can. Get your conviction plays in, because if Scheffler WDs, Rory McIlroy's 10 to 1. He becomes 7 to 1. And everything changes accordingly. And you're going to lose a little value this week. Just saying, if you have a conviction play. McIlroy is 10 to 1. Xander Schauffele's 11 to 1. Ludwig Aubert is 12 to 1, who I really, really like this week. I like him to bounce back. And I know that it doesn't pay as much to be a long hitter here. It doesn't. But he hits it so darn straight. It's unbelievable. And I think you saw that at the Masters a lot. The big mistake he did was to try to draw one. If he just keeps hitting them straight, 12 to 1 seems like a cheap price. Patrick Cantlay is 18 to 1. Tommy Fleetwood is 20 to 1, who I would really, really like if he's ever won in America before. Matt Fitzpatrick is 20 to 1, who I do like. He won here last year in a playoff. Max Homa is 22 to 1. Again, I think a little bit too much curve with the driver for my liking. Collin Morikawa, same price, 22 to 1. A little too much curve for my liking. Wyndham Clark was all sorts of off last week. He may have peaked. 25 to 1. Will Zalatoris, 25 to 1. I am interested in. He snuck in a really nice finish in the Masters. I was not sure going into the week what we were going to get from him putting-wise, and I still don't think it's great, but I think he can play this golf course very well. Jordan Spieth looks all sorts of lost, and anything could happen to him this week. He could win or he could miss the cut by 5, and I would not be surprised, and that makes him really impossible to bet. He's 28 to 1. He was in a playoff here last year, won the year before that. He likes the golf course. It's clear he likes the golf course, but he's playing like junk. And how do you support that? And by the way, if you didn't bet Ludwig already, he's now 11 to 1 at DraftKings. That happened while we're recording. So get it in now. Cam Young's 30 to 1. Had a good week. You know, he also hits a pretty straight ball. So I can get behind him. It's hard to bet a guy who's never won, but I can get behind him. He had a good week at the Masters. Sam Burns 35 to 1. Sahith Theegala 35 to 1. For as much as I love the straight ball hitters this week, Sahith may be one of the guys I play that is not a straight ball hitter because he has the imagination to pull off the shots you have to pull off if you get in the wrong spots. I like that a lot about him. So I would strongly consider him here. Justin Thomas looks lost 35 to 1, and he's got a new caddy. He's trying to figure out all kinds of things. Tony Finau 40 to 1. Kind of interesting to me. Siwoo 40 to 1. I really liked him in the Masters. And thank God the cut went to +6. He got in, made something of it on the weekend, had a pretty nice finish in the end, but he didn't play quite as well as I thought he would, as the market thought he would as well. Brian Harman's 40-1. He just kind of laid an egg at that Masters. Good news is, especially down the stretch in the second round, good news is he gets to come back for 4 more years, so that's okay for him. Russell Henley, I do like quite a bit of 45-1. Jason Day, man, that sweater was gross. 45-1. Corey Connors, 45-1 should make sense here. Great ball striker. It's a pretty straight ball. I do like that. Tom Kim had a nice weekend. 55-1, I think is at least worth a sketch of a bet. Maybe don't hit press, but if you're going to go kind of start betting these guys now in the kind of 40 or greater range, you're going to lose value in them if Scheffler WDs, and that is totally possible. So I would look at Tom Kim here. Chris Kirk, Akshay Bhatia has been playing well. He represented himself, I thought, pretty well at the Masters for a guy who got in at the last minute. He's going to play again. Seems like playing. He's got plenty of stamina. Playing good golf. I think it's worth a look. 60-1. Sanjay M. Shane Lowry, who's played this golf course well over the years, I think is another guy you should very strongly consider playing at 60-1. Denny, 60-1. I'm going to fade because I don't like the way he drives the golf ball. I love Denny McCarthy, but he's got to keep it in play this week, and that could be a struggle for him. Cam Davis, Ben on 60-1, I think is probably an easy fire this week. He played very, very well at the Masters. Great ball striker, plays well on tough courses. That's a guy to like. JT Poston's played well here. Harris English, I like a fair degree. They're both 65-1 along with Christian Bezadenhout. Taylor Moore, Steven Yeager. Sepp Straka, 70-1. He kind of interests me because he had a pretty good week last week, of course. And I had him in a third-round matchup bet against Matt Fitzpatrick, and it would have won me. I had some free bets. Would have won me a lot of money if he had beaten him. He was like a +140 underdog against Fitzpatrick, and he winds up losing by a shot, which is a bummer. But I do like him this week. He's done well on tougher, tighter golf courses. Think about TPC in Memphis at Southwind. If you're trying to think of a comp course, I think Southwind is a reasonable thought because Southwind is pretty tight. It's a tough driving course. It is longer, obviously, by a substantial margin than Harbour Town, but you got to keep the ball in play or you're in trouble because there's a lot of water, there's a lot of nasty stuff in the way. Sepp Straka has played well there before. He's played well at PGA National, which I think is a fair comp course. A lot of nasty stuff in the way. I would get behind Sepp Straka this week at 70-1. Tom Hoagie, 75. Matthew Pavon had a really nice Masters at 80-1. Got in the top 12. He gets to come back next year, along with Adam Schenk, who's 90-1. Both guys had a really nice week. Schenk's playing well. 90-1, I think, is worth a look for him. Keegan Bradley's 80-1. Adam Hadwin's 90-1. Kind of fell apart a little bit. Rick. Surprised Rick made the cut, to be honest with you. Won the par 3 contest, assumed that was just going to be Torpedo City. Nope, played pretty okay, 90-1. Kirk Kitayama had a nice week, 90-1. I'm not enthusiastic about enough of either of those to bet, but I do like them. Eric Cole made the cut in the Masters. That was cool. Emiliano Grillo, 90-1. I think worth at least a consideration. Lucas Glover's playing well. 100-1, I think, is worth a legitimate bet. I probably will fire in that. Eric Van Rooyen. I got a DM from on X. I'm at Ryan Ballagio on X if you want to DM me. My DMs are open. You can hold me whenever. And ask me, and he asks every year about Masters and other pool picks. And I'm happy to give that advice because it's not betting advice and it's not something that's covered under a membership. But you can ask me about whatever and I'll answer you. So he was 300-1 to win, and this guy messaged me. He was like, hey, who's one guy that's like a super long shot you think has a chance? I said Eric Van Rooyen. And about 10 holes in, I was like, I'm a genius. And then reality set in. But he still had a very good week. He's 110-1 this week. I think he's worth a consideration. At least the consideration, After that, I think it starts to get pretty dicey here. Andrew Putnam's 130, along with Nick Taylor, Mac Hughes, Jake Knapp. Patrick Rogers is 150 with Nick Dunlap. Just missed the cut. Austin Eckroat's in there. Eckroat's kind of interesting to me. Tee to green game, very, very good. Again, just won on a tight course. Well, perception-wise, a tight course at PGA National. I think he's at least worth a look. And then after that, you've got guys like Alejandro Tosti and Peter Malnati and Seamus Power. Guys that, Malnati did not have a good debut at the Masters. Hey, that's okay. Won this year. He had a great year already. Bryce Garnett's 500 to 1. Like guys like that are just happy to be there. So I think you could probably go as reasonably deep as 110 to 1, and then after that you're probably shutting it down. Again, if you're going to bet those players, your Ben Ons, your Shane Lowrys, your Tom Kims, your Sepp Straka's, Adam Schenk. If you want to bet those guys, do it now in the event that Scotty Scheffler withdraws. Just a word to the wise there. And if he doesn't, cool, you still get those prices. No one's going to bet on those guys. They're just not. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Corrales Puntacana Championship. This is an interesting field here. And I'm surprised Nikolai Højgaard didn't somehow get into the event this week, being a top 50 player. But he didn't. So here you go. You've got this tournament in the Dominican Republic. They've played it at a couple different points in the schedule. The Corrales Golf Club is longer. It's pretty windy. It's not especially easy. At least it seems like to the normal person, but these guys eat it up. I mean, you're looking at 16, 17, 19 under par. Matt Wallace won this last year on 19 under to take the tournament. I think he won by several shots. It's not an easy tournament to win because these guys can just tear it up. So if the wind blows, that's like your only chance that something, under 15 under wins. You got a decent field here. I mean, it's not great. It's not horrible either. You got Alex Noren and Nikolai Højgaard at 12 to 1. So people are going to want to bet Noren. He's a great ball striker, and that's fine. Højgaard hits it so far and has played well in wind. I can like him at 12 to 1. Billy Horschel's playing well. 20 to 1, I think, is worth a play if you're going to get in and degen on this tournament. Aaron Rai, I think, is too short, but he is a mutter, and he is a windy player. 22 to 1. Ben Martin has played well here in the past. 35 to 1. Had a really good sniff and a win here a couple years ago and just didn't get it done. Nate Lashley, 35 to 1. I like Mark Hubbard here this week at 35 to 1. Playing well this season. Always kind of does well in these Oppo events. So I think he's worth a look. Kevin Hughes, 35 to 1. Doug Gims, 35 to 1. I like Doug Gim playing good golf. Davis Thompson, 35. Daniel Berger. Victor Perez. Victor Perez is kind of interesting. 35 to 1. He has won in some difficult scoring conditions on the DP World Tour. I'm not saying that's going to automatically translate here, but it is worth a look. Your 40s, Ben Griffin, KH Lee, Bud Cauley, who I think is worth thinking about here. 45s, Sam Stevens, Sam Ryder, Justin Lauer, Johnny Vegas, Tristan Lawrence. That's kind of interesting. He came over to play this week. He's played okay at times on the DP World Tour this year. I don't love him in this place, but he is a better player, and you should at least keep him on your radar. S.H. Kim, 50 to 1 with Joe Brantlett. Joel Damon, who's won here, seems to kind of maybe be getting things together, sort of. Garrick Hagos, 50 to 1. Your 55s. Decent list, actually. Nick Hardy, Max Grazerman, who might be worth a look, played well in Tampa. Matty Schmid, 55 to 1, certainly worth a look, I think. Very streaky, but playing well. Kuchar, no. Justin Suh, maybe. Grayson Sigg, yes. I liked him a lot here when he was playing his best on the Korn Ferry Tour. I think he's playing okay. Chan Kim, a lot of people are going to like it, 50 to 1. Carl Yuan, 55 to 1. Your 60s. Alex Fitzpatrick playing this week. Not going to bet him, but it's cool he's playing. Michael Kim, 60 to 1. Playing probably some of the best golf of his career. Could be a good standout. Jimmy Stanger's played pretty well with some opportunities this year between the Korn Ferry Tour and the PGA Tour. I like him at 60 to 1. Chad Ramey has won here, 60 to 1. Tyler Duncan. Taylor Pendrith, I think is someone you should probably at least consider just because he's a long ball hitter. 60 to 1. Peter Quest, 65. Jacob Bridgman, 65. Now we're starting to get in some ugly territory here. Maybe a Parker Cootie, who's playing okay. I mean, he's the better of the Cootie brothers right now, 90 to 1. Maybe worth a consideration. Mac Meisner has done very well on longer golf courses that are windy, 90 to 1. I think is worth a look. Going down a little bit more. Henrik Norlander, I like in the wind a little bit at 110 to 1. If that manifests itself. And then you're starting to get, you're going to get a tighter set of odds, right? Because not all these players are as good, but you're not. I think your best chance is in your kind of 65, 70 and shorter. That's probably your best chance this week. I don't think you're probably going to get a super long shot that wins. You get maybe winners you don't expect in opposite field events because you've never seen them win before or they haven't won in a long time. But it typically isn't some massive mega 150, 200 to 1 shot. I mean, Bryce Garnett's probably your outlier for that, and that happened this year. But he is playing in the RBC Heritage, so you don't have to account for a guy like that. It could happen, but I think the safe range is playing a little bit shorter. There's a very reasonable chance Nikolai Højgaard just wins this thing by 5. I very strongly believe that. I think he's a great player. I think he's going to learn something from the experience of having the lead at the Masters and then immediately melting down. And I think he's a quick learner. So I hope that he has a good week. I think he will. All right. That's going to do it for us on today's show. Go over 2 tournaments. Talk a little bit about the Masters. It's a nice little day. Come back tomorrow. We will talk about the model for both tournaments, particularly the Heritage. Not so much the Corrales, but we'll talk about that too. And we'll talk about some other potential wagers, maybe a first-round leader thing, maybe some player props type stuff, maybe some matchups. That'll be on Wednesday too. And on Wednesday, we'll talk about Chevron Championship. We'll touch very briefly on the Korn Ferry Tour in Lakewood Ranch, Florida. We'll talk very briefly about the Invited Celebrity Classic on the PGA Tour Champions. And we'll get you ready for the week. There is no DP World Tour event this week. There was one scheduled to be the Korea Championship. They merged that tournament on the DP World Tour with a similar tournament on the Korean PGA Tour that is now in October. So the next event on the DP World Tour is next week, and that is in Japan. So we don't have anything to talk about the DP World Tour this week. Get a hold of me, Ryan at thegolfnewsnet.com. I'm on Twitter, Threads, X, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Ryan Ballantyne, Facebook and YouTube, Ryan Ballantyne Golf. Golf News Net's on all of the services that handle Golf News Net. You can join Golf News Net for $40 a year. Check us out at golfnewsnet.com. $10 for the first week. Like I said, $40 for the year gets you the remaining majors and gets you through next year's Masters. So that's not a bad deal. You're going to get 4 majors regardless. But you missed your window to get 5 majors out of it last week. But if you do it right in the weeks of the majors, you can still get 5 majors out of it. So not that I am kind of encouraging you to game my system. But if you wait until May and join, and you wait to the week of the PGA Championship, you do it like Tuesday or Wednesday, you're still going to get the data and modeling for that week, and you get it for the early week next year. So there's your smart thought there. I will continue to encourage that system because, hey, you're spending money. You're spending money with me. I want you to get max value out of it. All right. We'll be back tomorrow with another show. Thanks so much for your support last week, and thanks for the continued support moving forward. We will talk to you tomorrow on The Press.